Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be streaming this from, and many thanks to Phocuswright for the opportunity to spend and share some time with you this morning. I could not be more pumped about being here live and in person with all of you. It's truly an amazing thing. Show of hands, I don't know about everybody else. This is my probably fifth in-person business trip, and over the last 20 months or so, this is probably I've had another 6 either personal or leisure travel trips in that time, either flying or driving, with at least half of those, including a hotel stay or a vacation rental. Just wondering, for all the folks here, how many of you, is this more than the first business trip that you've had in person? Keep them up if it's more than 2. More than 3. Let me tell you, if this is any indication of where I believe our industry is headed, then I think we have a lot to look forward to. I am extremely excited about that. And one thing that the last 20 months has certainly taught me individually is just the massive importance that travel plays in every single aspect of our lives and our well-being. So at Google, and I don't have to certainly tell you about the last 20 minutes for most of us. It's been an arduous time, to say the least. But at Google, we spend a lot of our time listening to our partners, providing insights around fluctuating travel demand, pockets of demand, and so forth. And what we talk a lot about is the notion of readiness, right? Being prepared, what it means to have strength in the moment, to think about the future, to move forward, to ultimately be ready for what is next. And ultimately, how to really be ready for the things that are simply outside of our own control. So whether it was real-time demand shifts, either folks looking for flights or then changing to, kind of road trips, or if it was around, travel readiness and opportunities as it related to safety of certain regions and so forth. The one thing that we continued to hear over and over again is that it is absolutely critical to make sure that you are continuing to transform, and that transformation, to be successful, really relies on the notion of data transformation. Seeing some rolling eyes out there. Data transformation. All right, here we go with data transformation. Yes, it is an overused term. But I think it's largely sometimes overused because people really don't understand what data transformation actually means. I think a lot of the times when we think about data transformation, we think about this massively long, arduous journey that most likely is going to be an expensive proposition. And that is intimidating. It's an intimidating prospect, particularly when you add in the notion of the fact that many of us have depleted resources. Of the resources that remain, they're probably pretty exhausted, and any number of other additional pressures. Well, at Google, we don't think that data transformation should be a huge overhaul, nor do we believe that it's one size fits all. Every company has their own set of objectives and different ways of approaching the topic. What we do believe it should include is the process of breaking down silos, right? This notion of really taking every aspect of talent and expertise from across the organization to bear, right? And that we also think that it's a journey that ultimately relies on kind of shorter, agile planning to really meet all the changes that the world is throwing at us on a day-by-day basis, and sometimes even in an hour-to-hour basis. And we call this journey the route to ready. Now, the route to ready helps brands break down the process of data transformation into much smaller, more manageable steps. And it generally asks 2 questions. The first, how do we have impact today and build resilience for tomorrow? And the second is, how do we shift the mindset of the entire organization to understand that data transformation is both a value add and an ongoing process, with the notion of being ready for what's next. Data transformation ultimately helps develop resilience and agility. And we've seen that that is absolutely needed over the past 20 months of the journey that we've all been on. And as I think about 2022, this notion of transformation is incredibly, incredibly important as we see the consumer behavior changing in three major ways. The first, consumers expect travel to be more meaningful, which should inform new customer experiences. Consumers expect travel to be more inclusive, which influences our talent, our teams, our culture, and marketing. And last, consumers expect travel to be more sustainable, which truly relies on data and insights. So first, travel being more meaningful. Let's be clear, there is a lot of pent-up demand. I know it, I feel it, I want to continue to be out there. I know many of your customers feel the same way. It's a real thing. And we have seen a number of strong indicators that people are planning major life moments that were ultimately put on hold as a function of the pandemic. In fact, over half of Americans surveyed are likely to participate in a life moment in the next 2 years. And travel plays a key role in that for many of them, whether it's a marriage, pursuing or returning to trying to get a degree, a job change, or just simply moving. 78% of those folks are considering travel arrangements related to those meaningful life moments. We in this room can create amazing customer experiences as part of those moments. The second area, as you can imagine, truly resonates with me. And I hope that it resonates with a lot of you. Travel will be more inclusive. This is clearly a challenging topic, not only for the travel industry, but many industries. But it's something that we've got to clearly pay attention to. The social dynamics, most recently over the past 20 months, has been honestly very dynamic. And we are hearing the voices of the people out there demanding change. I believe the good news for many of us is that we're leaned in and we're listening. And we're truly putting our best intent forward, trying to make change in that regard. So we will continue to see an increased focus coming out of the pandemic on travelers of color. And in fact, around this group, we know that they value cultural engagement as a function of the destinations that they choose to go to. 86 of them take this into consideration when traveling abroad. 3 of 4 of them seek information specific to their cultural background. I know I do, right? I'm looking at travel blogs, I'm looking for social influencers and word of mouth, people that are telling me, hey, there's this great experience that you should check out when you go to Playa del Carmen, for example. Knowing this should make us think about how we think about our marketing, how we think about our messaging, how we think about our brands and what they stand for, because the bottom line is inclusion is key. And it's not even about necessarily who is giving the message, but it's also about what that message is. Now, the good news is you don't need to start from scratch here. In fact, at Google, we've outlined several best practices in terms of how you think about creative messaging when engaging with travelers of color. But I will say, a lot of the times that change starts from within. As we transform, we want to think about how we build out diverse teams and organizations within our own companies. Who's in those boardrooms? Who are in the rooms when those marketing decisions are being made? Something to really think about as we want to ensure that we have representation where it matters. And lastly, travelers are more aware of their impact on the planet. They're making more conscious decisions about how and where they are traveling to. When they travel, they are adopting new behaviors around really looking at carbon footprints and emissions, the type of place that they will stay, what will be their imprint, and how they go about getting there. Travel, at the end of the day, will continue to be more sustainable. Environmental considerations are clearly more important all the time. In fact, 50% of travelers that were surveyed globally say that environment is absolutely an important function of the decisions they make when considering potential travel. Data and insights, as you can imagine, play a key role here. In fact, Google has launched tools to give to consumers to make that decision-making process more easy, right? We're in early stages, but along with our flights information, we've given information around carbon emissions, right? In conjunction with both pricing and duration of flights so that consumers are empowered to understand and make decisions around information that is important to sustainability. This will continue to be a topic moving forward, and we're very encouraged by seeing so many brands leaned in on this fantastic topic. So, who knows what ultimately will be next? The future is clearly unpredictable, but I am confident in the work that I know that so many of you are doing for your organizations, what you're doing for your people, and what you're doing for our fabulous industry. You don't have to do everything, but you probably need to do something. And doing something is going to ensure that you are ready for what's next. Thank you so much.
It's time for the interview with Kevin May, Editor-in-Chief of Phocuswright.
All right, man. Good. Take a seat, Nelson.
Yeah, I guess I can drop this here, yeah?
Please. For those of you that weren't snapping all the data points, by remarkable coincidence, we've just run a story on Phocuswright with all of that on there. So it's almost like we planned it. Anyway. Okay, so route to ready. One of the elements in that you talk about is the new customer experiences, right? So how do you actually relate some of what you're talking about almost in a kind of a profound way? It's much more kind of less about travel shopping and buying, but let these people here understand about how it does relate to the stuff that they're really, really interested in. Because it's great what you're saying,
Yeah.
but it needs to have a practical consideration as well. So talk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as I mentioned in the talk, there are all these different things that have been kind of put on the shelf, right? In terms of life events and moments that people want to be able to take advantage of. The smartest or most successful marketers will be the ones who really think about how to bring those experiences to life in a certain kind of way that is meaningful and memorable for those people at the time that they engage with them. Hyatt, who's a partner of ours, is a perfect example in terms of how they've used first-party data. In fact, Hyatt has often talked about this notion of content in context, right? And how they've ultimately kind of redesigned their organization to be more flat, completely no silos, people from different aspects of the company, engineering, product, marketing, and so forth, to come together to get a holistic view of those customers. So what we had before, we should certainly not take it, take for granted, and what we know is next, we should certainly not take. We should be thinking about using in a very proper manner. And so this notion of first-party data, being able to curate and mine that in a way that there's a certain level of personalization that can now come with these experiences, is I think the way that people will, or companies will really be able to take advantage of engaging with customers in a way that ultimately builds loyalty in a new kind of way and extends that notion beyond even that experience.
Okay. I've just noticed our clock is, we don't have much time. I thought we had longer, so
Sure.
we're going to whiz through here.
Of course.
So the third element, which is around sustainability, which is arguably the most important thing that anybody should be discussing now, I think. You're doing these new tools, which you talked about. Would you concede, however, that as arguably the biggest tech company in the world, or one of, that maybe you should even have a bigger role?
At Google, this is actually one of our core values. We've been actually involved in sustainability for quite some time. To your point, it takes a lot of computing power, as you can imagine, to do the things that we do. And it's always been, our drive toward being carbon neutral has always been a big function of the way we do things. As a function of that, our notion around sustainability is, one, kind of leading from the front, making sure that from an innovative standpoint, we continue to do what is ultimately at the cutting edge of innovation around sustainability. Two, making sure that we support our partners, so sharing best practices, helping them to elevate their own notions around the idea of sustainability. And lastly, making sure that we enable that for everyone, right, through our products and through our tools. We've actually even created, within the last couple of months, a sustainability team at Google, which is a function of a number of engineers and researchers that are really continuing to drive the cutting edge of the notion of sustainability. And many of you may be familiar with with Travelist, which is a not-for-profit that is being driven by the Duke of Sussex, for which we partner with entities along the lines of Booking and TripAdvisor around really creating a basic understanding of sustainability and surfacing that information in a ubiquitous manner for all travelers who want to know more about sustainable efforts.
Okay, so we've talked about the presentation. Everybody always wants to hear about some of the other things that Google may or may not be doing.
Sure.
So, marketing tactics during this recovery period, are you seeing more kind of blended approaches to those, so less reliance on keyword buying and things like that?
Yes. Look, the three things that we see most successful marketers doing, particularly during this time, are three things. The first is being insights-led, right? So really understanding where your customer is, how you meet them where they are, and trying to take that to the next level. The second is being data-driven, right? And using data as a way through times of disruption and ambiguity to really find pockets of demand and being able to take advantage of those opportunities, largely driven through automation. And the last part is being agile. Your ability to pivot, to change directions during these times is massively important. By extension, our products are all designed because we know our marketing partners have a number of different diverse marketing objectives. And as we think about that, some of the most successful partners within that space also are ones that are blending notions of brand and performance in an always-on kind of full funnel approach to the business. The reality is consumers are consuming content, they're searching and doing a number of things, but across many different surfaces. So having some level of a presence both within brand and performance at the same time is recommended, and we're seeing a lot of success with those who have chosen to do that kind of a blended approach.
But sometimes a blended approach means you earn less money.
Is what?
You earn less money. Google does, right? So if Booking Holdings and Expedia Group are not spending as much on keyword buys as perhaps they were before because they're going for a blended approach, you still advocate for that because it's better for them rather than better for you.
We think at the end of the day, doing what's best for the consumer and what's best for the traveler is ultimately the best for everyone involved. Our mission at Google, as it relates to travel specifically, is to connect users and travelers with travel companies in a very effortless and seamless way.
Okay.
And by doing so, we both have a suite of free tools which are available to everyone around different types of listings, be they hotel availability or flight availability. That in combination with the more commerce end of the equation, where we can continue to deepen relationships with these users, ultimately over time we think brings a tremendous amount of value to our paid partners as well. And they can play in either one of those spaces.
Related to that, it's a question that always gets asked, which is why we're asking it again. There is, we've had CEOs of the aforementioned companies that I said just then, saying, Google is eating our own lunch. So what's this year's response to that? Because it is something that gets asked, because it's a valid question that they have, or it's an even more valid concern that they have. I think that's fair.
Yes. Our focus at Google is really kind of rooted in that mission that I mentioned, right? In terms of bringing, if you think about our core mission, even, and I'm paraphrasing that, bringing, collecting the world's information and bringing and making it accessible to everyone. It's the same with travel. At the end of the day, regardless of whether you're an OTA or a supplier or what have you, we want to make sure that we're doing the best job in order to cultivate great leads and making them available to our travel partners. So we don't see those two things being at odds. We value all of our travel partners, regardless of meta, OTA, or suppliers, in all the same fashion.
Okay, so hotels doing well, Google Flights is doing well. You've made some moves into tour and activities in the last year or so.
Yep.
I guess the one segment that you still haven't made a specific move into is car rental and car ride-hailing and things like that, other than that you can see things on Google Maps. So what's your approach to sectors that you haven't, dare I say, conquered? But do you know what I mean?
Well, rental cars is an interesting category, particularly because, and look, we've all been hit hard in numerous ways in the past 20 months, probably some not to the extent that either car rentals or even cruises, quite frankly, have seen. As it relates to even car rentals, it remains the same in terms of our overall approach to dealing with our partners broadly. But the one thing I will say about car rentals that I find very interesting is a lean into the notion of sustainability, which I think is an exciting space for them in particular. In fact, Hertz, which is a good partner of ours, literally just did a deal to buy 100,000 vehicles from Tesla, right? And so we're seeing some significant change in terms of how that category is thinking about sustainability and thinking about the desire and importance of how their travelers want to see things change. And it's an area that we're excited about and we'll continue to monitor.
And if you can answer as briefly as you can, because of the clock.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin.
Take your Google hat off for a moment, if you can, Nelson. What's the biggest thing that still kind of really annoys you about travel that perhaps Google can't fix? Maybe it can, but tell us.
Well, for me personally, it's this notion of personalization, or lack of, is actually what annoys me. And I think that it is a continued head nod to the importance and notion of first-party data and how you curate it and how you ultimately use it, both in terms of how you target, ultimately how you measure, but even the experience for which someone is experiencing your brand. Right? Okay. Them not knowing about me or not having a sense of what I might be interested in, or giving me the opportunity to upgrade or think about something differently is what really annoys me. When I feel like I'm having to start from scratch, that's a problem for me.
Okay, beware. Okay. Nelson Boyce from Google, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you all.
Thank you, man. Take it easy.
This is Amadeus Flight Search. Intelligent, open, flexible, serving every search touchpoint. Attract and inspire travelers. Propose offers to compare with options to monetize, retarget, and convert. Join our flight search ecosystem with improved search capabilities, relevant content, and more choice. Don't settle for less. Be the best. The time is now. The search is on.
Everyone has the right to a smooth travel experience, no matter who you are or where you're flying to. But flights don't always go to plan. We've all learned that recently. That's why you want AirHelp by your side. We can inform you about your rights, get you compensation for delays and cancellations, or simply support you during a disruption. Enjoy peace of mind when you fly with AirHelp. AirHelp, here to help.